What's up, everybody? This is your man DJ Square Knot, and this evening we're coming to you, and we're going to continue to do this. And what we are doing is interviewing and spotlighting our own members. And tonight we're doing a special one to kick this thing off. This man knows about the sound. He knows how to get your audio right. Hell, he worked for BET. So you know what? He's been doing the doggone thing. He's at all the sporting events, everything. This man has a footprint or a fingerprint somewhere. Who am I talking about? The one, the only, DJ Dave G. What's up, my man?
Yo.
So, Dave G,
Yes, sir.
first off, man, I want to thank you for allowing me to do this, allowing the group to be able to spotlight you. So I know you're going to share some very interesting stuff with us. You have been around quite a bit as it comes to in the industry and at the particular level of audio and engineering and all of that. And we definitely would love to hear about some of that. And also, we just want to learn more about you, man, because uh, some of the things that you have mentioned to me, I'll be honest with you, I was like, wow, this man is taking care of himself. He's doing great things for himself. Um, and I have to say, you're really smooth with it. So that's a plus. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is who you are. Who is Dave G?
Let's see. Conscious, somewhat of an activist. Generally, I work so much that it's hard to be as active as I would like to be. But music lover, uh, political junkie. Uh, I like to think of myself as an intellectual, although there would be some other people that disagree with that, and that's okay. Um, but the main thing that I am is uh, a music lover. I love a variety of types of music. I love playing music. I love listening to music. That's what got me into sound. That's got into my career. Into DJing, all that. It's my love for music. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Got it. As we look at that, a piece inside that nutshell, which was going to be my next question of what migrated you or attracted you to the whole music scene. Um, uh, when you first think about it, and you think about the thing, that song, that whatever it was that main attraction to get you to the point where you were now in love with this thing that we call music. Can you think back to what that exactly was?
Well, if you listen to my mom, she'll tell you that when I was just barely able to sit up, she would prop me up in the center of the room. She would put on some music and she would, do her chores. And I would just sit there and, whatever. And then she would get done and she would turn the music off. And she said that I would throw a hissy fit, just, arms flailing, legs flailing, crying, yelling. And she was like, what is going on? And then she put the music back on. She figured out it was the music. She put the music back on and I would calm right down. So, it kind of started then. She always says, she'll tell you today that she knew that I was going to be involved in music some kind of way based on that. But as far as, memories, my older brother used to be into music. And, he turned me on to a lot of different stuff. And I used to, whenever he wasn't home, I'd be down there listening to his music, Commodores or whatever, And the thing that fascinated me was I remember discovering what stereo was. I heard like I don't remember the song, but I heard this guitar riff come out of just one speaker. and not the other. And I was like, wow, wow. Moved the needle back on the record and listened to it again, and I was fascinated by that. I was like, why would they do that? I didn't understand. So that's kind of what intrigued me, uh, as far as sound. But as far as music, my brother definitely is the person that got me into that.
Cool beans. So, and I take it that that particular time, like you said, your brother obviously was more into the R&B scene, which you were first introduced to. Is that safe to say?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
and you mentioned Commodores. In several conversations, you've mentioned several other groups. Now, if I said, could you give me the top three, your top three of all times? What would they be, artists in terms of groups or individuals? Who are they?
Stevie Wonder, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and probably Brass Construction.
Great groups,
Yeah,
great selections. Yes, indeed.
yeah,
I can totally agree with those for sure. Well,
yeah.
I can't disagree with whatever you tell me anyway, but what I'm
Well,
saying,
you could. I mean,
but I totally, I'm on board with all of them for sure. So, fast forwarding a little bit, um, of course, you grow up, you start, you get in school, high school, junior high school. I don't know if you guys call it intermediate school like we do in New York, but then high school, and then you get ready to head to college, and you go to where?
the same college as the future vice president, Howard University.
Howard University.
That's right.
My man. Now tell me about Howard University.
Oh, you know, I mentioned earlier that I grew up in Massachusetts, right? So it was, mostly white folks, and but I had a core group of black friends, and we had a black church that was kind of an enclave in the middle of in the midst of sea of whiteness, if you will. And but it wasn't quite the same. It was like the same, you know 15, 20 friends. We all, and a few others, around. But it was basically the same core group of friends, and a large percentage of them were from the same family, cousins, brothers, all that kind of stuff. So, and not that there's anything wrong with that. We were all cool. But I came to visit my older brother when I was like 16. He went to Howard as well. And I had never seen that many black people in one place at one time. And I knew from that point on that I was going to Howard. I mean, that I just could not get out of Massachusetts fast enough. And, there's all these beautiful, beautiful black women, but black people in general, but just, women that I've never seen before, just
Hmm.
all shapes, sizes, colors, just, it was unbelievable. And that was in the summertime. So, that was my main motivation. Yeah, and plus DC was a black city.
Hmm.
They don't call it Chocolate City for nothing. So, uh, that is what made me want to go to Howard, just to get away from those crazy bald heads, if you will.
You sure it wasn't the women, man? Come on now.
Oh, sure, that was a part of it. Absolutely. I mean,
I,
but
I,
the main motivation was to get away from. I mean, because I'm gonna tell you, man, I've had some crazy ass experiences growing up around white folks. I mean, just all kinds of racism. From the I was born in D.C., but I grew up in Massachusetts. We lived in D.C. till I was 4, and so I grew up in Massachusetts till I was 18, from 4 to 18. And I went to DC, and I never really came back to Massachusetts. I mean, I came back for the summers, a couple summers, but after that, you know, I've lived in DC ever since, or DC area ever since.
Cool beans. So you're at Howard University. You got definitely got eye candy walking all around you. Um, what did you study?
Computer-based information systems in the School of Business.
Cool beans. Cool beans.
I was
So
IT before it was IT.
gotcha. I was getting ready to say all about the technology, IT man.
Yeah.
So fast forwarding, I take it that the IT world got you. Did it is that what got you started in what you currently do now?
No. I
Okay,
I do, well, technically, yeah, I kind of do IT now, but it's only as it relates to sound.
gotcha. So
But I had a job working in computers,
mhm.
in the computer field, and when I first got out of college, and it was cool. I like computers, but it wasn't what I was passionate about. I mean, I could have stayed in it, but my supervisor, there was like the position that I was in at the time was called a database search assistant level 2. Well, really, it was the lower of the two levels. Level 1 was the higher level. So there was a guy in my office who left, and he was the database 1. So they needed one. So I, went to my boss, and I was like, you know, I'd like to make a little more money, and we got the position open. So I'm sitting in the office, and he starts talking about how my desk isn't neat, and I'm sitting there thinking, what does that have to do with the job? Am I capable of doing the job? And the answer was yes, because that guy was a lawyer, and I'm a computer major, so I'm certainly more qualified than he was. But you know, but as soon as he started talking about my desk, I kind of stopped listening to him, and I was like, I can either leave now, or I can make. And I'm saying this to myself, or I can make them pay and leave later. And I decided, right then and there, I was going to make them pay. So I started doing all this stuff with, we had these databases. Essentially, what happens is the company, or the government would sue a company, or they would get sued on whatever contract they had, and they'd have these ongoing disputes. So they would subpoena documents, and then our company would go through those documents, pick out pertinent information, then make a database out of it. So the database search assistant would, find someone who would come in and say, I need you to find all the documents written by John Doe on, between this date and this date. And I would create a search to find all those documents and, print out a report. But I was capable of doing, so much more. So I started doing more stuff. I would make programs that would change the format of the database, because the database was, really kind of gobbledygook. But I would make it come out in a format that was readable, and then they had a problem with duplicate document numbers, and I created a program to delete the duplicates and print out a list, and all that kind of stuff. So I was doing a lot of different stuff. And a friend of mine was in another office, and she was like the second in command at her office. So her boss was going to be on vacation, so she would go to these weekly meetings just to get up to speed so she could fill in for him while he was on vacation. And the weekly meetings were with the woman from the Department of Justice. And everybody was scared to death of her because she could, at snap of her fingers, cancel the contract, and that company would essentially be out of business. So whatever she wanted, they would accommodate. So my friend calls me up one day after going to one of these meetings, and she says to me, David. I was like, yeah, what's up? She says, what are you doing over there? I said, what do you mean? She said, this woman, whatever her name was, I don't remember, but she said this woman doesn't talk about anybody, and she specifically mentioned you. Said we cannot lose David Grain because of XYZ. She said, what are you doing over there? And I just started laughing. And I said, I'm a computer programmer, so, I can do all kind of things. So, with my boss, who the same guy who was talking about my desk, didn't know that I knew this. So a few days later, he and another woman who was second in command in her office are talking to me about another job as a senior programmer, which is 2 levels above where I was. They were like, "Are you interested in being a senior programmer?" And da 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 ABCXYZ. And I was like, "Yeah, sure." But I was on the inside, I was kind of laughing because I knew the only reason they were there is because this woman from the Department of Justice specified that they need to have me. So soon after that, um, I decided that I was going to move to New York and go on the road because I had a couple friends that were on tour with this woman, Misha Paris. And they were like, you can just, I had gone up to visit and hang out and, got to meet Misha Paris. And they were like, all you got to do is move to New York, man, and we'll find a spot for you. And so I decided that I was just going to move to New York, quit my job, move to New York, and because my brother lived in New York or just outside of New York, so I could live with him for a while or whatever. But that weekend I got back, and there was a message on my answer machine from my eventual boss at BET, because I had applied months before, and they told me they hired someone else, and I was whatever. So he's like, we got a spot for you in the evenings if you're interested. We had something come up, and so I was working in the daytime in computers, working at BET at night, and then they eventually offered me a full-time position, and I left that job, and uh, that was one of the greatest feelings ever, to give my 2-week notice, kind of a you can kiss my ass type of thing. And because they knew, because I knew that they could not afford to lose me, for fear of this woman. And it was one of the greatest feelings in the world to just tell them to kiss my ass. I got to go. So, and I started working at BET, and I guess the rest is kind of history. But um, yeah, that's pretty much my story. Well, my mentor, the guy who taught me how to do sound, was putting himself through med school. I met him like when I was a freshman at at, at college, and he was putting himself through med school doing sound for go-go bands, and he was an absolutely brilliant sound engineer. Could probably made just as much money as a sound engineer as he did as a doctor, because he was brilliant. And there's stuff that he taught me that I still use today. So I was doing sound on the side for years. I worked at a theater on campus, and smoky little nightclubs. I did, I did a 7 nights at a strip club for the Dell's 25th anniversary. That was kind of wild, but just a little bit of everything here and there. But it was never full time until I got to BET.
So when you applied for BET, you were applying for a job as a sound engineer at BET.
Yes.
Okay, and that eventually happened, and like you say, the rest is history. But
Yeah.
you worked on a lot of shows, if I'm correct, that we have only heard about on TV. Is that so?
Um, what do you mean only heard about on TV?
Like we, I know that I forget the name of the show that you mentioned a couple nights ago. Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. But tell us about this. Tell us about some of the projects that you worked on at BET.
Well, I worked on Video Soul with Donnie Simpson. Everybody knows that. Um, well, maybe not now because it's been a while since he's been on, but uh, Video LP with uh, Angela Stribling, and I worked with Rachel, everyone's favorite Caribbean girl. I worked with Sherry Carter, Madeline Woods. Met a whole bunch of, different celebrities and what have you. I worked on Teen Summit. That was on
Teen Summit.
Saturdays.
Yeah.
Saw Escape on their very first day. Before they had a record deal. There was like a showcase that they did, and they performed, and somebody saw them on that showcase, and that's how they got their record deal.
Cool beans. So, along with being an engineer at BET, eventually you got to the point. Was it you? Because I know at one point you said that, or you became a freelance
Yeah.
audio engineer. Was that after BET, or was there something in between BET and you becoming a freelance?
Uh, well, it was after BET. And I'm laughing because at BET we weren't making much money. I mean, nobody was making a lot of money except for the higher ups. But as far as the technicians and nobody was making a lot of money. So, but we had each other, and it was like a family at BET, and that was the greatest thing about BET. That and mixing with celebrities when they got their guard down. So that was some of those conversations are worth the all the crap that I went through at BET, the low pay and whatever else. So, what was your original question?
No, I think you answered it because I was thinking about and you said Teen Summit. That's the one that you mentioned.
Oh,
So Teen Summit was one of them for sure.
yeah,
So you shift from BET and you shift into a freelance status and you move into the sports arena, correct?
yeah.
So tell us about the sports arena and the different events and that you've done there.
Well, sports is a completely different animal from mixing music. It's completely it's like night and day. I mean, it's still you're sitting behind a soundboard, but it's the terminology is different, the methodology is different. Like for you mix for a band, and you got to get a balance between all the different instruments so that one's not blowing another one out, and but sports is similar in that you got to get the announcers above the crowd noise and above the, say if it's basketball, the ball going through the hoop, the as they're dribbling up and down the court, still has to be a balance. So it's kind of similar, but again, the terminology is different. Um, just it, the methodology is just totally like, for instance, you might put compression on several different instruments, but you wouldn't necessarily do that in sports. Just as a small example. Um, Gain structure is a little different, and so but it's still the same basic idea of mixing, but it's just like comparing apples to oranges.
Gotcha, gotcha. So, as a freelance, like for example, me as an IT guy, a technology specialist, 30 plus years, I've built, relationships. I've had owned companies to where, right now, if somebody wanted some IT, they could call me and do that because of, what I had done with them before. Is it kind of the same with you and your freelance deal where you have those relationships that bring you more business, or are you literally going out and reaching out to individuals that are in these different sports arenas and saying, hey, this is what I do, blah, 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 blah? Or is it all referral, or how does that work? Because that's the one thing that I was trying to figure out with you in terms of how does your work come? Because I know at one point before this pandemic, man, you were working your behind off. And I was like, is Dave working for a company, or is that like, and when you said freelance, I was like, oh my God. I said, man, this dude is busy as hell.
Well, yeah. I mean, DC is one of uh, the DC, the DMV area is there's a lot of work in sports because we have, basically two football teams between DC and Baltimore, two baseball teams, basketball team, WNBA, and a bunch of colleges within 3 hours, a 3 hours drive. There's a bunch of colleges that are fairly decent that you can work on. Like UVA is 3 hours from here, 2.5 hours. They do a lot of games down there. There's University of Richmond, VCU. They went to the Final Four a few years ago, and George Mason, they went to the Final Four a few years ago, and but there's several colleges that people want to televise. Different networks want to televise. Plus, there's a lot of news. There's if you work in TV, this is a good place to be, except during pandemics.
I feel you on that because and the other thing I was attached to that particular question is not only in DC, but you've traveled quite a bit all over the nation doing what you do.
Yeah.
So, and I was just curious about how do they contract you out, or is that like in a relationship that you have established through your marketing, or is that through word of mouth or something like that? That's what I was just curious about.
Most of it's word of mouth. You
Okay.
know,
Well, that's good.
um, somebody will say, "Well, I need a sound engineer for whatever," and do you know anybody? And then someone will say, "Yeah, I know this guy, Dave G." And they generally don't question your, they don't ask for a resume or anything like that. They just assume that if you've been recommended by someone that you can do whatever.
Yeah, that speaks
So
volumes.
yeah, so
Yes.
you know, I think about like when I first started in sports, I was so nervous. I mean, I was drenched. I was so nervous. But I think about that show. It was like my first game for ESPN, and uh, the average show that I do for the NBA or NHL or whatever is bigger than that show was. You know what I mean? Like the average show,
Mm,
just on a Tuesday,
mhm.
Milwaukee comes to town or whatever. Um, that's that show is bigger than my first show. So a lot of it is fear of the unknown. You know, when I first started off, it's like am I going to be able to do this? You're just nervous about making a mistake. And now I've done shows that are, you know, that will dwarf that show.
Yeah.
So
Well, you definitely can't make mistakes when you're doing all that stuff. That's on the fly. That's live.
yeah.
So it's that. Yeah, I understand that, man, for sure. So you got to
Well,
be.
it's not so much that you can't make mistakes. People are human. This
Mhm.
guy told me, a long time ago. He said, even some of the top engineers in the world, like this guy Ed Green, used to mix all the basically all the award shows that you see. He was the mixer for it, and he said, Ed Green makes mistakes, but he makes them in such a way that no one knows. He recovers so quickly. So it's more so about that. You try not to make mistakes, but they happen. But um, the bottom line is, how do you recover? If you recover and no one notices, or it's just a little hiccup and it's no big deal, then you're good. But if you crash and burn, then that's a problem. So
So the audio guy.
Yeah.
Now, you're engineering, you're doing all of this. The one thing that I wanted to get into that's going to take us into um, your music production is DJing. So, how long have you been DJing?
40 plus years. Started when I was in high school. This guy, his name was Butch, and he pretty much used to DJ a lot of the parties. And when I was younger, I didn't realize this, but Butch was from New York, and he's from New York City, and I'm a kid in the suburbs, so I don't really understand, his moves, how he moves, and stuff like that. The stuff he was into, and I didn't understand that, but I used to like watch him and try to figure out what he was doing in terms of, somehow he would blend two stereo systems together and find a way to blend between the two stereo systems before he had a mixer. And then, he got a mixer, and I was always like watching him, kind of similar to your story, where you had to carry the crates and, all that kind of stuff. And then you finally got to stand beneath him. And then, one day you get the call, like I was like, in between my freshman and sophomore year in college. It's at a party, and he points at me, calls me over. He says, "I want you to DJ." I said, "Okay," but it was like that moment, like, wow, this guy wants me to DJ. Wow, now I'm there. I finally made it. That was kind of the feeling I got. So, and then I don't think I really saw Butch after that, because I didn't really live in Massachusetts much after that. So we linked up on Facebook like 5 years ago or something. And I always wanted to tell him, he was my inspiration, he was my mentor, and all that kind of stuff. But he passed away, so I never got to tell him that. But he was definitely, I should have mentioned him earlier, but he was definitely an inspiration for me, and kind of watching how he did things and trying to figure out exactly what he did, and asking questions or whatever.
So you started DJing in high school, and that, of course, that was in Massachusetts, correct?
Yeah.
So, what was that like, being that you grew up mostly, in a predominantly white community, and you're the black DJ coming in, and the types of music you were playing?
Well, I mean, uh,
And we're talking 40 years ago. We're not talking like today or
right, right, right. Yeah. Well, like I said, we kind of had a black kind of community, and so all the parties were black. It was like at my friend's house in their basement with all the parents upstairs, all that kind of thing. And so that was pretty much it. Um, I didn't really DJ for white folks because one, they didn't dance, two, they didn't have DJs, and they would just play a stereo, and then song would end, they play the next song. That's kind of how they roll. With us, it was, we want to keep dancing. So you had to somehow figure out a way to mix, and that's where this guy Butch came in. He figured out something. I don't know how he did it, but he would figure out something before he actually was able to get a mixer.
cool beans. So, obviously, Butch was definitely a mentor, and definitely an inspiration to you, getting into the DJ world. Do you have any others that inspired you?
Into the DJ world,
DJ,
um,
you know,
there,
as you progress more as a DJ.
right.
What age were you at that point?
When I first started,
Mhm.
like 16, 17, something like that.
So, 16 years old, you're DJing. People are getting to know. And what was your DJ name back then? I forgot to ask that.
I didn't really have one.
Okay, so you,
DJ Dave or I don't know.
so you're 16 years old. You're DJing. You're getting there. You start learning more and more about the music, and then it goes from there. What happens after a high school? You start. You still.
Um, well, I went to college,
Mhm.
and there's this crew of guys from New York, and it was like, I don't know, 10 guys, and they were rappers and DJs at the same time. And between them all, they had all the equipment. So it was divided amongst all the different guys. Like if one guy didn't show up with the amp, then they were screwed. But they used to call themselves the Gemini Crew, and they had uh, like these T-shirts that were made, and they would do their events and on campus. And I was like, wow, these cats have really got it together. This is really something. And then that guy who I said was my sound mentor, he uh, needed someone to help him out. So that's how I got into the sound part. But he also needed someone to DJ for various parties. Or like his idea was to have a DJ because, like I said, he used to do sound for go go bands. And his idea was to have a DJ in between bands. So that never really took off because people just weren't into that at the time. Go go. I don't know if you've ever been to a go go, but it's a surreal experience. People get into a trance once the go go starts,
Hmm.
and they don't want to hear nothing else. They really don't. They want to hear go go music, and that's pretty much it. So that didn't really take off as as an idea of it's kind of a neat idea, but it just didn't work. Because go-go bands, the part of the reason they have the name go-go is because they go and they go and they go, and that was their concept to kind of compete with DJs, was to just keep playing music. So like they could play 5 songs with no breaks, and that's kind of how they rolled. So a DJ was really kind of unnecessary. But so he uh, gave me some turntables. Uh, got my first Techniques 1200 from him. He just gave it to me. His I found out later that his family had a little bit of money, and he was, uh, I guess I'll call it a silver spoon kid, but still he was, a brilliant sound engineer and made a lot of money doing sound. So he was like, I got this turntable sitting here. You can just have it. I was like, cool. So I still have that turntable, from 39 years ago,
Wow.
and so that's how I got my equipment. Then I would, do some stuff on campus, and I would borrow some stuff from him, and he never charged me for it. Of course, he never paid me either, but he never charged me for it. I got paid with experience, so that was that was good enough for me at the time. But I would, be able to use stuff for my own gigs and stuff like that. He'd let me use amps and whatever else, and so it was a pretty cool relationship, and that's how I got started. I started doing little stuff, little house parties, and then started doing more and more stuff, and then I linked up with this guy who had more gear, and we started doing fraternity parties and step shows. And it's funny, when Facebook first started up, there was this Howard group, and or various Howard groups, and this one guy posted this picture of this Greek show. Well, he had several pictures because his brother was an alpha, so he's taking pictures of his brother, and I'm in the background. I was like, oh shit, that's me. And, because I recognized the speakers. I was like, whoa, those are my. And then I saw some more subsequent pictures, and there I was in the background. I was like, wow. I remember that day like it was yesterday, but it was a pretty neat experience to see myself, from 35 years prior, or 30 years prior, whatever it was.
So, what was it like for you for the first gig that you got paid for?
DJing?
Yeah.
Uh, you know, the most exhilarating part is seeing the crowd happy. Because in school, like I said, you could tell where someone was from just by the way they dressed. And so these cats from New York, they were like hardcore. Like if you DJ'd a New Yorkers party, you better pay New Yorkers music, or else they would, start booing you. They were hardcore. They did not play around. So I had been to parties. Not that I was DJing, but I'd been to parties where some of them cats would, break out a deck of cards, pull out a table and chairs in the middle of the dance floor, and start playing cards to let you know your shit was whack. That, or they would stand around, with their Adidas and their feet in, perpendicular with their arms folded, just looking at you, sucking their teeth. What's he gonna do next? What's he gonna play next?
He's playing spades in the middle of the floor.
Man, they were not playing, but they would stand around, and if you could get New Yorkers dancing, then you could do it for anybody. And then I kind of got into and this is kind of in the infancy of hip hop. I won't say the infancy. For me, it was the infancy because I hadn't heard of hip hop before Rapper's Delight. So up in Massachusetts, we didn't hear half of the stuff that some of my boys were into. So once I got in good with the New Yorkers, I was straight. You know, I could do any party. They do a little less standing around with each party. Once they get going, oh, okay, okay, okay. I see what you're doing. I see you, bro. Yeah, all right. That kind of stuff. And once I got the pass from them, then I was good. And then I kind of got into house music a little bit. Because back in the day, you couldn't play an entire party with nothing but hip hop because there just wasn't enough out.
Mm-hmm.
And people would revolt if even the New Yorkers party, they were like, you got to play Love Is the Message, man.
Mm-hmm.
You got to play Disco Circus. You know what I mean? So you had to play a little bit of everything, and that was a kind of a good training ground for me. Got into house music, got into a lot of R&B, hip hop, a little bit of everything. There was even a little bit of rock that you would mix in there, some soulful rock.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, you just tapped into, but I think you just explained it, so I guess I don't have to answer that question. Is when did you get into house music? Because I know that there's been a couple sets where you've played house, um, but I think you pretty much tapped into that a little bit. So
yeah, it's and I still don't consider myself to be like a house DJ, because house DJs, like their ability to play music and keep people on the floor is an art in itself. Just DJing it alone is an art. But like I can play like Jackie Body, I can play all the basic cuts. But these cats go deep into that stuff that people just lose their minds over. And I'm not that deep into it. Like I have to listen to other people. Like now, for instance, I have to, like, a friend of mine has a house music show on Monday nights, and I have to Shazam half of his stuff because he's coming out with something new like every single week, some dope ass music, and I'm just like, wow, I never would have heard that, But he's a really good house DJ, and he's a really good hip hop DJ, and he's a really good R&B DJ. I mean, when I say good, he's like really good. So I don't really consider myself to be a house DJ. I'm a DJ who can play house music, but like I made a mixtape one time, and this sister from Chicago, who I kind of knew in school, but I didn't really know her. I was like, so what'd you think? And she was like, it was all right. It wasn't really, it wasn't really straight up house. It was, it was kind of, And I was like, okay. So, so I'm not really a house. I don't really consider myself a house music DJ because there are other people that are way better at it than I am. And, all I can do is kind of emulate them, but I don't come up with that stuff on my own.
Gotcha. Well, I've taken up a lot of time in terms of asking a bunch of questions that, of course, just listening to you over, since I've known you. So I wanted to make sure I put those in. But of course, we have several DJs on here, colleagues who would definitely want to ask you some questions. So I'm going to open the floor up to them. I'm going to, start down the line and I'll let each of them ask you something. And
I don't take requests and I don't take questions.
And we'll take it from there. So, DJ Travis Gales, what's up, my man? You got a question for Dave G? I think he just walked into a doghouse. Dun, dun. Travis Gales, can you hear me? All right. Well, we'll come back to you, my brother. DJ Yoshi. Let me see. Is Yoshi still at work right now?
No, I'm here.
Okay. Got a question for
not I really don't have a question. But just him talking about his experiences is good to know, especially for a DJ like me. But yeah, I appreciate it.
Cool beans, cool beans.
Thank you.
DJ Country Boy.
What they do?
Got anything for DJ Dave G?
Dave G. So, what your years at BT? What was the span?
89 to 99.
89, and I was just trying to see if you was the dude that messed up my sound when I did Comic View. I just wanted to know, just try and check and see. And then
you didn't do that in DC Comic View, did you?
No, I did it in New Orleans.
Yeah, that wasn't me.
Then you say you did Howard?
I went to Howard, yeah.
And then, but you didn't mention Lionel Richie. How can you go to Howard and not mention Lionel?
Lionel Richie? He went to Tuskegee.
I thought he went to Howard.
Nah, he went to Tuskegee. The whole Commodores band went to Tuskegee.
Why did I think they were at Howard? I know I visited Howard. For some reason, Lionel Richie name came up.
I don't know why that was.
Nevertheless, I just think you had a vast experience, man, and I appreciate you sharing it with us. Earlier, I kind of said I don't want to talk to this guy, but I realized now, maybe I do want to talk to you. Kind of been around a little bit, so you're very, very impressive run there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Especially a man that probably been around since Lotus was popular, huh?
Since what?
Lotus.
What
was the computer system before it was?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, let me put it this way. When I was in college, we were using punch cards.
You had a mainframe, huh?
Yeah. I forget what the terminals are called, but we had these terminals that were attached to the mainframe, and we were doing COBOL and Fortran and.
See, that's what I'm saying. I don't even remember those words anymore. You can't say. You ask a computer cat now and say, well, what about the code? What he said?
Like when I was using Windows, it was still basically DOS.
You're right.
So
So, yeah, I appreciate your experiences, man, and appreciate you sharing it with us, brother.
the pleasure was mine.
Yeah.
DJ
Good, Square.
Nick said, "What's up?"
He just
Wake
wants to
up,
know if
man.
I'll be on the show.
All right, we'll go back to him in a little bit because he unmuted. But I don't know where he is. So we'll go to DJI95.
All right, what was the first song you spent?
The first? You mean at a party?
Yes.
Probably Rapper's Delight.
And what was the feeling like?
Just see it was exhilarating. Seeing people react to something that I played. That was exhilarating.
It's an honor and pleasure, like I always say. A DJ brother with you, and thank you.
Pleasure is mine.
DJ Michael Lee, what's up?
Hey, it's a good thing to be in the same group as you, Dave G.
You as well.
Thank you again for sharing your story. But I'm just kind of wondering, what do you plan on doing, like in terms of your future career? You seem to have vast knowledge of the industry. Do you plan on staying in this, DJing, or just kind of venturing out to something?
Well, I'm a DJ as long as I can carry my turntables. As far as sound goes, I'm one of the few people that I know that loves what they do. Like, I love what I do. So I'm going to do that as long as I can. As long as I can hear, I'm going to be doing sound. So
great. Stay with it.
I will.
Cool beans. So then we have DJ Big Dooley. What's up?
He's either asleep or eating.
We're going to give it to DJ Silent Professor.
I guess good morning.
Yep.
I don't really got a question, but I definitely appreciate all the knowledge. It seems like you traveled a long road, and it's much well deserved. So just keep putting in that hard work.
Thank you.
DJ Joe Storm, are you awake, my brother?
Oh,
yeah.
What? Turn off the high pass filter.
Oh, I sound bad?
No, I'm just messing with you, man.
Okay. I really ain't got a question, man. Only thing I got to say, man, from the first day I've talked to you, since we've been on the Zoom, man, you have been an inspiration to me, man. I mean, I listen to, I love your stories. You're a great storyteller, very vivid. Like I said, you're an inspiration. You said you consider yourself intellectual. Well, you consider yourself an intellectual, and other people might feel the same, but I do. I feel you're a very intelligent brother, man, and shucks, I learn a lot from just watching you, just listening to you talk. I always think that I run into people that can. I always think that I am at the end of a road when I don't run into different people, but God always puts me around people that can inspire me. So I can say you are definitely an inspiration, man. keep doing what you're doing, man. And that's all I can say, really, man.
Thank you. I learn something every day, or at least I try to. So, from you and from everybody else that contributes,
Yeah.
different perspectives always, help the growth process.
Right.
DJ Travis Gales, are you there?
Whenever you go to him, he goes completely dark.
DJ Big Dooley, are you there? DJ Big Said, are you there? All right, now I say, Big Said, you got anything for Dave G? DJ Dave G?
Dave G, man, just want to say thank you for the interview, man, and give me your top 5 rappers of all time.
Top 5 rappers of all time. Well, I have to preface it by saying I'm not really a lyrics person. I'm more so a flow person. How a person flows over the track is what kind of is the first thing that attracted me to it. So I'll just say KRS-One, Rakim, and not in any particular order. CL Smooth. Did I say KRS-One already?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And with his latest effort, I'd say Tracy Lee. He's kind of gotten me into lyrics, and just listening to him, he's a very lyrical brother. And let's see, number 5. I have to think about that for a second. Let me think about that for a second and
all right,
come back to that.
Got it. So we'll wait on that last one. But while we do that, I did this on purpose. I usually put him first, but now I'm gonna let him just before I do any, let him come and talk about what he wants to say and everything to my man Dave G. We talk about the primary admin up in here, DJ Rod Flash. What's up?
What's up, Dave? One of the elders of the group.
Was it elders? Did you say elders?
Yeah, you one of the elders. You like one of the oldest of the group.
Who are you calling old?
I didn't call you old. That's why I said elder. I didn't say old.
Okay.
But I've been listening to the interview. Okay. Just say you didn't get that phone call from BET. What you think you'd be doing right now?
I'd probably be on tour with somebody, living in New York. Or probably something to that effect, because go ahead.
So you wouldn't have took the computer job at all?
No, that was when I was at the computer job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, the New York job was another sound job.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I was gonna be on tour with Misha Paris, either doing monitors or whatever.
Now,
just whatever they need me to do.
So you say you do more the sports sound. Would you ever like to do concert sound?
I would love to.
Okay.
But it pays. Sports pays the bills right now. So.
Right.
I just did. Well, actually, I didn't really mix it, but I just did an opera a couple weeks ago, and that was really interesting. They had a opera singer and a pianist, and that was a really interesting thing to listen to. So, excuse me.
And one thing I think we're not in touch on, that you also make your beats also, and you also produce.
Yeah.
Would you actually want to do a whole, like your own album, like pretty much production from making the beats into producing an album?
Sure. I mean, why not? I'm I'm still in the learning stages of producing. So I'm I'm kind of in my infancy as far as producing goes. So every time I put something together, I learn something a little more about whatever it is I'm working with. Like I was using an MPC, and then I kind of got into Studio One, and so I'm trying to figure out the best workflow for me right now.
Got it. And that's it.
All right.
Well, man, you are a really interesting guy, man. And you have a lot of experience. I love listening to you myself. I agree with Joe Storm. Um, how you definitely are an inspiration, no doubt. And just some of the things that you talk about, and the experience. It's almost you are able to share your stories in a way where we can actually kind of put ourselves there sometimes, and that's a beautiful thing. Because it helps us understand you more and understand the experience that you had, which is great. And Flash already hit about the production piece, and I just think about, before I get into that last question, I just want to say much respect to you, man, and continue to do your job the way you're doing it. I know you love it. I could tell you love it. I could tell that you're passionate about it. The way you talk about it, the way you explain it, everything, man. So kudos to you. And I like the fact that you are conscious. I like the fact that you're not afraid to voice your opinion. I like the fact that when you speak, you have done your homework. I really, really enjoy that. And that in itself is very inspiring. And man, I have nothing more to say on that front.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. And the other thing that I wanted to hit as a closeout was, I think Flash kind of asked it in terms of the producing side and about the album situation. But I was going to say, where you produced you're in a contest at the end of, what is it, weekly contest of creating beats.
Mm-hmm.
And when you create these beats, if there was one artist that you could give your beats to or sell your beats to, who would be that artist?
Probably, because I do mostly hip hop. I would probably say like, Rakim. If Rakim was to say, "Yo, I want to use one of your beats," that would be the ultimate for me. Or KRS-One. There's some of my favorite hip hop artists. So
cool.
If they said, Dave, I like that beat, hook a brother up.
It's a done deal.
Yeah.
Well, it's truly been a pleasure to interview you, man, get to know you a little bit more. I try to dig as much as I can. That's what I love to do. I like to learn about, the person that I'm talking to, and, having a conversation, picking out what you say and adding on to that. And through that, man, we know more about who you are. Some things that we didn't know, now we know, which is beautiful. So we appreciate you. Are there any last words before I close this out?
I just thought of something, a couple things. One, I performed at the Apollo one time. Not on the show, but just at the Apollo.
Oh,
that
I
was
going to say
that was
I'm
kind of a neat experience. What's that?
I said I was going to go and look that up.
No, well, no, it wasn't on the
The
show.
group.
But there was this cat that I went to school with who was an aspiring rapper, and he wanted me to be the DJ. But at the Apollo, they don't allow you time to set up your equipment. So I had to be like one of the dancers. it was an experience. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything, but it was an experience. It was an experience. And the second thing is one of the highlights of my career was working as a audio assist on the Grammys one year when it was in New York. It was the year when Natalie Cole did the duet with her father on video.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that was a spectacular event, and I learned more in that 2-week span that I was up there than I had in the previous, 8 or 9 years of my career. It was a tremendous learning experience just watching these cats who are at the top of the industry do their thing on a high level.
Wow.
So those are two highlights of my career that I neglected to mention.
Well, you know what? Those are two highlights that leave me nothing else to come behind that. That's a good way to close that joint for real. So we say from the DJ Information Group, my brother, we really appreciate you, man. Mr. the man, the one, the only, DJ Dave G. We appreciate you, my brother. Thank you for allowing us to dig into you a little bit and continue to be here for the next round.
That's
Peace.
right.